Hello, my friends. So, I'm back. Did you miss me? Probably not. 11 days on. A lot's happened in 11 days. But the Henry Covert channel is back in action. I may try to do a backlog of videos today. I have an entire day and a half until I have to work all day Christmas Eve. Um, a lot's happened, mostly bad, but today some good things. So I'm gonna leave all my interpersonal whatevers, like, because those seem to be more popular than my reviews for some reason. For the next video I do, um, I'm still in the post ad meliora phase, and working out the grieving process. But I trimmed myself today. I had like a full beard and looked nasty, so I trimmed myself and I went to an orthopedist and that was really exciting. So I might talk about that in my next video. This one, though, I am going to do an honest to gosh blue review episode. I don't know what episode I'm on, but it'll be in the number there. So I'm just starting the day kind of relaxing. It's 2:45 p.m. Too early perhaps to be drinking, but I don't care. I haven't drank in a while, but now I really need it for a couple of days. So I've been in a lot of physical pain and some heartache and some other issues, financial, you know. Anyway, this is one of these cups we get at Target where I work. I don't work for Target. I work inside of a Target. This is one of their Starbucks Target cups, and inside this I have my own kind of strawberry margarita thing with strawberry margarita with some ginger ale and a little bit of the strawberry lemonade. So it's pretty awesome, but I haven't even gotten a buzz yet. Now the next few videos, I may be trash, but this is really good. The rare pleasures of life. So anyway, still got my gauntlets, but I have some plans to alleviate the pain and pressure. So self-care is on the way. All right. That all having been said, what am I going to review for Blue Review? Well, I'm going to talk about this damn Hawkeye TV series. Hawkeye is a character I've been fan of since I was about 6 years old. I might go down memory lane about that in a minute, but anyway, as you guys all know, even those of you who aren't hooked on the MCU and the Marvel movies and superhero movies and all that stuff, sure you know by now the Avengers, some of the highest grossing films of all time worldwide, including Avengers Endgame, and one of the Avengers who appears in most of the Avengers films, as well as in a Captain America film, which is really an Avengers film, Civil War. But he appears in Endgame in a key role, and he's finally been gifted with his own miniseries on Disney Plus, which spins directly out of the events of Endgame in many ways, and also brings a lot of other elements into play as far as taking the MCU into like the next phase. I guess we're in phase 4 or whatever they call it. Phase 5, when I guess I have a feeling phase 5 is going to climax with a fifth Avengers movie, a fifth official. The lineup is going to be drastically, radically different. We already kind of know Shang-Chi is going to be in it. I'm sure Captain Marvel will be in it. Probably one of the Eternals. Probably the Black Knight, Dane Whitman, and quite possibly a couple of characters in this show. So, what the fuck is this Hawkeye show about? Well, I want to go back to and this is going to tie in anyway. I want us to kind of trip backward, do a time trip to the year 2015, when you had the beginning of the amazing Netflix show Daredevil debuting, starring the great Charlie Cox as Daredevil. and Vincent D'Onofrio as the formidable Kingpin Wilson Fisk. Uh, Needless to say, Daredevil is my second all-time favorite TV series. Period. By far, my favorite TV series adapted from a comic or related to superheroes or anything of that nature, action, whatever. Um, it just hit a resonant note with me. I have a video about a two-part video about Will and Matt. Matt being Matt Murdock, Daredevil. He has his own video that I did about a year ago. And then I had a kind of a companion video that was about Will, that guy. My brain went blank completely. The guy in Hannibal, um, Will Graham, and the profiler. And I saw a lot of similar energy in those actors and those characters, and I really resonated with it. And then my ex fiance, a mystic, self-proclaimed mystic, you know, caught on to that even before I mentioned anything to her. So my alchemical intuition was good with or without her validation, but that was nice to have at the time. Um, so I've trod the Matt road there, and I'm sure I'll be talking more because it looks like Matt Murdock Daredevil, played by Charlie Cox, is poised to return to the MCU soon. Um, so anyway, we're going to get down into the semantics and the pedantics and everything, nuts and bolts of this. My point in bringing up the Netflix series, besides the fact it dovetails into Hawkeye in a big way, is that uh, I remember when they were starting to catch on, and Daredevil, and then followed by Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, etc. And Jeremy Renner had expressed interest in having a Hawkeye series on Netflix. I think he felt like his character was maybe underserved, overlooked in the Avengers with all the powerhouses, even compared to the flashier, I guess, sexier, bolder character Natasha Romanoff, who, like him, was really just a trained fighter and assassin, no superpowers. So he kind of was like the sixth wheel in the original Avengers in a lot of people's eyes, and I think maybe in the character's own eyes, and I think in Jeremy Renner's eyes. So he was like, why can't we do Hawkeye? Because he's a human with specialized skills like Daredevil, or the Punisher. So why not? I at the time I thought it was kind of a ridiculous idea. I don't know why I did. I just kind of felt like he wouldn't fit into that milieu. Um, and part of it was my ambivalence over the character. The adaptation of Clint Barton from the comic books to live action has been one that's been fraught with kind of odd decisions and kind of unexpected twists and turns. Some not so great to me at the time they returned, uh, but most of them have panned out. I think this series has kind of hammered out all of the rough edges, really just in time for Renner to probably pretty much retire as the character Hawkeye and pass the torch to a new Hawkeye who will be an Avenger. That's how I'm reading it, and that's certainly the way it seems poised to happen. Um, so this is really good. So the gist of it is now on Disney Plus, Jeremy Renner finally has a Hawkeye series. Um, I have generally liked Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, but I did not like him in Avengers. I didn't think he looked like Hawkeye or acted like Hawkeye. He had a bow and arrow, and they called him Hawkeye. His name was Clint Barton. He did have a past with the Black Widow. Okay, so that's it. Other than that, there really was no personality similarities. There was no romance with him in the Black Widow, as there was for a number of years in the early Marvel days before she left him for Daredevil. and he ended up marrying Mockingbird. There's a nod to that in this show too. Mockingbird became a character in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series, which is really a moot point because apparently past season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer canonical in the MCU, according to Kevin Feige, which is just as well because I think the quality. Well, I wasn't really a fan of seasons 1 or 2. So I don't know if Mockingbird's really still an MCU character or not. But there is a little nod to that at the very end of the series. So yeah, Hawkeye went from being kind of a hot-headed, just dude with an attitude, inferiority complex, a big mouth, wisecracking, funny, self-deprecating, and definitely deprecating everyone around him. Always challenging authority, especially Captain America. He started as kind of a crook, working for the Black Widow against Iron Man, though he wanted to be a hero. Became an Avenger. He reformed. And identity was a big thing with Clint Barton in the comic books. First of all, we didn't even know his name was Clint Barton until I believe Avenger 64. I think I've just sold off the key issues in the early 60s of the Avengers. I had a long run of Silver Age, several I had duplicates of, and several signed by Roy Thomas, the writer, who I know, and been selling most of them on eBay lately. Thank goodness, I really need the money. Please buy from my eBay store. I'll put the link this time. I swear, I'm having a massive Merry Christmas blowout sale. I'm marking everything down. I haven't had much chance to add a lot of new items because of my hands so messed up, but I have been, slowly doing some markdowns across the board. I have about 250 items, and of course, many hundreds more that I'm going to log in 2022. So I've been selling those issues, and some classic run with Roy Thomas on Clint Barton, because you got Hawkeye as this kind of acerbic, sarcastic, rebellious, iconoclastic dude. He's a trip. He's very relatable, kind of working class guy, alongside the Vision, who's like a Spock-like android, and the Great Black Panther, the brilliant and dynamic and erudite leader and fighter. And those three were the core of Roy Thomas's Avengers. I mean, Hank Pym and Janet Pym came and went. Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch came and went. Hercules came and went. And of course, the big three, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, came and went. Black Knight popped up once in a while. But really, it was those three characters for a run, I would say, from number 50. Well, okay. Black Panther came in issue 52. I still haven't sold that. I'm selling that for about 120 if anyone's interested. But issue 57, the Vision first appearance, I have sold that. 58, the Vision's origin, I have sold that. And then he joins the Avengers. So from numbers 58 until 87, when Black Panther quits for a while, 30 solid issues, almost 3 years, our time. T'Challa, Vision, and Clint Barton were really the heart, soul, and core of the Avengers. Now, of course, Vision and Black Panther remained Vision and Black Panther for the whole time. At the beginning of this period, no one even knew Hawkeye's real name. Stan Lee never bothered to make one up, neither did Don Heck, neither did Roy Thomas, and finally he did. Not long after the Vision joined, Clint was feeling really outclassed, and of course, having numerous romantic issues with the Black Widow at the time. And he threw down the bow and arrow, and he took some of Henry Pym's serum, Pym particles, and he grew to become the new Goliath, as Pym had forsaken the Goliath identity for the identity of Yellow Jacket, which I always thought was cooler anyway. Great run of stories, and when it finally kind of climaxes, that particular issue, I've just sold that one actually, I believe for $50. I had a nice copy. I think it's 62. I'm getting them all mixed up. I think it's 62, where Hawkeye becomes Goliath, and he's got a different costume than Hank Pym. He looks really cool, and Gene Colan took over as artist. So that only lasted a few issues, but he did a great job. It's Gene Colan, okay. And in these issues, you realize, for his real name is Clint Barton. You don't even know that at first. By the time he's Goliath, they're still like, oh, Hawkeye's Goliath, but who's Hawkeye? And they run into this crook called Barney Barton, and he's working for this really kind of 10th rate Henry Pym foe called Egghead, who I never quite got his appeal. And Barney gets killed off trying to, be a good guy after all. And that's when we find that Barney was Clint's older brother, and he was kind of a crook. They both kind of grew up like orphans, rough and tumble, hard scrabble life, and they worked in a carnival. And the guy who mentored them was Jacques Duquesne, aka the Swordsman. And the Swordsman taught Clint Barton, all the things he knew with bladed weapons, and also inspired him to pick up the bow and arrow. So he soon became a expert archer. So the Swordsman and Clint Barton, they had a nice little act going, but the Swordsman tried to rob he tried to embezzle from the carousel or the carnival, whatever, and tried to kill Hawkeye, and then went into a life of crime, and eventually he redeemed himself and became an Avenger and then died a hero. A lot of people think the Swordsman's kind of a pathetic character because he had such bad luck as an Avenger, but I think that was the intention of the writer Steve Englehart in the early 70s. The arc of Swordsman's redemption and failure it's really a great stuff, really. I mean, he tried, and then there were retcons later with other aspects of his origin as associated with Hawkeye, or his own origin, like with his relative Armand Duquesne, and we learned all that much later with different writers. So I expected, I found out the Swordsman was going to be a character in this, just called Jack Duquesne, and he was going to, look pretty similar to the comics, at least, uncostumed. I thought, well, maybe they're going to show part of Hawkeye's origin in the carnival. But, they're on the course where Hawkeye has the family. And once Joss Whedon made that up for the Age of Ultron film, it really sharply diverged, except for the Black Widow connection, sharply diverged from the comic book Clint Barton. So, I mean, Clint Barton was never an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. back in the day. Natasha was. And their fates were linked, but it was kind of the opposite. It was Natasha was a villain and tried to get him to help her, and then he turned good, and that redeemed her. So sort of in the MCU, she was an assassin, double agent, and he was ordered to kill her by S.H.I.E.L.D. And instead, since she wanted out of Russia and out of the spy thing, and he spared her life, and they went to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., and they became best friends. They're only best friends, not lovers. That they never went to that point with that. At first, I was disappointed that because of what strayed from the comics, but I'm okay with it now. I get it, and it's interesting to have a friendship like that's platonic, especially when you have a character like Natasha and an actress like Scarlett Johansson, who's like a worldwide sex symbol or whatever. So naturally people are like, well, Clint, man, what the hell? But Clint had a wife, and they've been married a while, and they've got some kids, and but there's a little story behind that which they don't elaborate on, but they give you a nice little clue at the end of the show. I'll get back to that. I mentioned that before. So where am I going with this? Well, basically that Clint Barton in the movies is not Clint Barton in the comics. Clint Barton in the comics, like I said, had an identity issue. Not only was he Goliath, he later disguised briefly as a character called the Golden Archer in order to kind of fuck with Captain America and get his morale raised. He later he posed as another costumed character, and I've forgotten in one shot. Oh, well, okay, that's 3, right? Hawkeye, Goliath, Golden Archer, 4. Okay, and then much later, he took the mantle of Ronan, from Echo, who first held it in the New Avengers comics. Now that dovetails in with the show too, and the Avengers Endgame, where his alternate identity of Ronan has become canonical in the MCU. So Ronan was a fifth identity. Then he even briefly tried to take over as Captain America in a very recent comics. So he's had about 6 identities: Hawkeye, Ronin, and like 4 others. So briefly, so it's easier just to call him Clint Barton at this point. I'm glad Roy made up his name so that we didn't have to just keep calling him. That guy used to be Hawkeye, and then he was Goliath, and now he's Ronin. Now, he had a good long run as Goliath, I have to say, you know. But it was so far back, and most recent fans aren't going to remember it or care. But you know, it was before my time, even. So, you know, and I was very resonant with it. But my first exposure to Hawkeye briefly was in 1973, maybe. I was a little munchkin, and I couldn't read, of course, and I was, you know, pointing at comics I wanted my mommy to buy me, and one colorful one had the Hulk on it, and you know, I was already learning the characters by that time. I knew the Hulk, I knew the Submariner, kind of. They were on the cover, but so was this chick called Valkyrie. I wasn't familiar with her, and this purple-clad guy that I thought I'd seen on some comics. I'd seen him in a covers of Avengers a few months prior. His name was Hawkeye, and my mom bought me that issue. It was Defenders #7, where Hawkeye joins the Defenders. And Hawkeye, like I said back then, he was like a rebellious, cantankerous, you know, motherfucker. And he was like, fuck this Avengers shit. You know, Natasha dumped me. Wanda doesn't like me. Woe is me. I'm just a fucking archer. You know, I'm not Goliath anymore. I think I'm going to hang out with Doctor Strange and these clowns. Well, Doctor Strange wasn't actually around when he happened upon the Hulk, and then the Hulk led him to Submariner and Valkyrie, and hence the Defenders. And of course, their thing is, well, we're not really a team, we're a non-team, we're gathered together when Strange needs us. But Strange wasn't around. It turns out Submariner needed some help fighting Atuma, one of his underwater foes, and Hawkeye came in, and man, Hawkeye was like the liveliest character in the book. He was, as an outsider going into the Defenders, he always had a trippy, you know, wisecrack and some comparison to the Avengers, and in a way, it's like, yeah, this isn't done like the Avengers, but you know, I kind of like it because I'm over the Avengers, and so he ended up joining for several issues, and of course, that's a plot point that's long since it's never mentioned. You know, it's like Hawkeye was never a member of the Defenders. He's never listed on the official listings in the Marvel handbook or even on Wikipedia. I thought about going on Wikipedia and fixing their Defenders entry because it really sucks. It's very inaccurate and lousy. Wikipedia, anybody can do it if you register. I used to do some work on it, but there's some strange people to work for. I'm just gonna at that. Okay. So I immediately loved Hawkeye. Now, that's when Steve Englehart was writing Hawkeye, and you know, so he kind of was in charge of his fate. Hawkeye floated around a while that period. For a while, he even went back in time to the Old West and hung out with Two Gun Kid, and then they came back to the present and hung out together. It was a while before Hawkeye became kind of a regular Avenger and settled down. And when he finally did, and he met Mockingbird and they got married, then the Shield connection got stronger, and then he actually went on to lead the West Coast Avengers, and Englehart wrote that, and it was kind of like Hawkeye's come of age, etc. So anyway, we can toss the vast majority of that out the window when talking about this TV show. I'm just giving you some context of the comic book Hawkeye, which take it or leave it. So yeah, the movie Hawkeye, really, like I said, he was considered by many a third stringer, 10th stringer, whatever, kind of like he was in the comic. But you know, Age of Ultron beefed him up. It showed that other dimension to him, other than being friends with Black Widow and an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., that he was a family man, and he had this dual life. He had 2 children, and his wife was pregnant with another on the way. And when the Avengers kind of went on the run from Ultron, they holed up at Clint's house. And so you start to see that extra side of Clint. And of course, the other important scene in the movie is that Quicksilver saved Clint's life from a hail of bullets, which he was fast enough to knock Hawkeye and I think some kid out of the way that Hawkeye was trying to save, but the bullets all got him. So that was it for Quicksilver. And So yeah, so that was kind of cool. And then Hawkeye appears in Captain America: Civil War. I think that was the first movie where he really kind of acted like the Hawkeye I was used to. He was more sarcastic. He was more brash. He kind of went with his gut about things. Um, he was very protective of the Black Widow, the Scarlet Witch, even to the point of fighting the Vision, um, and not being afraid, really, trying to fight the Black Panther, and that didn't go down too well. And he looked a little bit more like Hawkeye. He had kind of the bare arms and the, purple kind of highlights to his mostly black costume. Still didn't wear a mask or anything like in the comics. Um, so I enjoyed him in that movie, and he was very sardonic to Tony Stark when they were captured on the raft and branded as being traitors because they didn't sign those stupid Sokovia Accords. So he didn't appear in Infinity War because apparently the government, Shield or whoever, the government, I guess, Shield had fallen. Uh, they put him and Scott under house arrest since they had families. Scott Lang's house arrest you saw in play out in Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. Hawkeye's was just all off screen, and you kind of return to it at the beginning of Avengers Endgame, and his family's gone. They're all blipped out with half the universe, like due to Thanos' snap of the Infinity Gauntlet. So that kind of, we leap 5 years of a world that's kind of, in disarray, with half of all the living creatures gone and believed permanently dead. And Hawkeye has become the Ronin, and he's an assassin. He's not working for Shield, just working for whoever I guess will hire him, and he's taking down bad guys and getting a lot of blood on his hands. The Ronin costume was pretty close to the comic book. The comic book costume was a little cooler, just the stylized way it was drawn, but it's the closest they could have come with like most of his face covered, and went more in more of a hood rather than a helmet, and so it kind of was evocative of a ninja, kind of deal, and so he became the Ronin, and he was now the masterless samurai. Uh, and Echo never was Ronin in the MCU, but Echo is connected to Clint that way, and she was the first Ronin and then turned it over to him. And then they're also connected, and apparently they were briefly romantically involved shortly after Clint became Ronin and she was hanging out with the Avengers. So they slapped her into the Hawkeye theory, just like they slapped the Swordsman, but occupying different roles in relation to Hawkeye than the ones they occupied in the comic books. But like they're there, so they're still part of the tapestry. But Marvel's kind of weaving its own, alternate take on it. So the series takes place over a few days. It's 6 episodes, 6 1-hour episodes, and it's leading up to Christmas, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Clint is wanting to spend it with his family. Of course, the aforementioned third child was born. I guess before the blip, and then came back. They all came back. Hadn't aged any. Clint had, and Clint basically. You get the impression of he's kind of maybe on his way toward a permanent retirement, which is what he was planning on doing after Age of Ultron, and he quit the Avengers then, um, and then just kind of got roped back in with everything. Um, so yeah, and I mean, basically, we learn a lot of character bits about Clint. We learn that he's mostly deaf, and they show quick flashes of things that have happened to him over the years, and that's really it. They don't really try to explain like if this exact incident did it because he's kind of asked, and that's kind of what he flashes back to. And really, it's just explosions and all kinds of things going off next to his head all the time for years, and the rough and tumble. He's deaf in. I guess it's this ear. He's deaf. I'm trying to get get it straight here. So he's deaf in this ear, partially deaf in that ear. So he wears a hearing aid all the time. Um, that is a nod to the comic books. Hawkeye, in order to defeat a foe during the same period he met Mockingbird, set off this sonic arrow that went round and round and round and then blew up or whatever. And it went around and around enough to where it killed the hearing in Hawkeye's left ear. So they've translated that, which is another cool connection with Echo, which, as you know, and they probably did this in the comic books. I don't know if they dated. I guess they went there. I haven't read those books, but obviously Echo is a deaf character in the comic books. She's a deaf, half Native American, half Hispanic character named Maya Lopez, and she debuted in Daredevil. And she was kind of a puppet of the Kingpin, who had been like a father figure, and he kind of sent her to kind of seduce Matt Murdock. And then, of course, her ability is that she's kind of like the Taskmaster who we saw in the Black Widow movie. She can mimic, just by watching, she can mimic anybody's ability. So any fighting style, any skill, like music or cooking or anything, she can do it. She has what they call photographic reflexes in the comics for Taskmaster. So Taskmaster kind of had a very brief, inglorious outing in Black Widow, and then kind of fizzled out and died. So that character's never going to achieve the kind of cult cachet of the comic book version, who's a bit different. So Echo's the only person with that power now in the MCU, so that's kind of cool. So there's no confusion with that, because a lot of people considered Echo a copy of Taskmaster when she was introduced, but really it was a matter of, Daredevil's mainly known for being blind, so Echo's known for being deaf. So her power, this photographic reflex, this memory, this adapting of other people's skill sets, she's an echo of them. Get it? Anyway, I always thought she was a cool character. She never spoke, and and it had interior monologue. Another very enigmatic and dark lover for Matt, like Elektra or Typhoid Mary, or even in her darker days, the Black Widow. Matt's got that. Matt attracts these women, and he is attracted to them. Whether Matt will meet Echo in the MCU, I don't know, but I seriously hope so. I seriously hope they hook up. That's all I'm going to say. So, I'm going all over the map. So the show, Hawkeye, basically, like I said, he's intending to have this holiday with his family, and he gets mixed up in this intrigue with this girl named Kate Bishop. Kate Bishop is played by an actress named Haley Stanfield, I believe. She is pretty good. I think she's good at playing this young Kate Bishop, who is a character from the Young Avengers comics, who ultimately takes over the mantle of Hawkeye in the comics too. And they capture her character well. She's a very naive character, but she's confident, but she's a little insecure. She's a little starstruck when she meets Hawkeye. Everybody, they make an emphasis. They emphasize that everybody's got like their favorite Avengers or whatever, especially after they saved everyone's life in the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie, and hers was Hawkeye. She, her brownstone or rich whatever high-rise penthouse or whatever where her rich parents live got blown apart, and she's like a 12-year-old girl or something, and she sees Clint, and he's like jumping across the thing and using the arrows and saving people, and she just kind of, I don't want to say fell in love, but he became her idol, her icon, and they have a really touching scene actually in the last episode where she tells him really in depth like how it made her feel, and she's like, you don't have to fly or shoot lasers out of your hands, you're just a guy, who can't fly, jumping through the air to save people, jumping across buildings with a stick and a string, and you're a hero, and he's of course very humbled because Clint has, as we realize in this series, he's got a lot of guilt over all the killings he's done, not just as Ronin, primarily as Ronin, but also just over the years. He says, he like when he worked for Shield, and he says he was, I was a weapon, I was aimed by the right people at the right targets, but I was still just a weapon. And he feels like a part of his soul is kind of, gone because of having to live that existence. Okay, so I'm going to pause this real quick before I wrap it up. This is like, it's probably going to be an hour, so bear with me. I am back. Okay, so essentially Kate Bishop kind of adopts Glenn as her mentor. And of course, he's kind of like, nah, she's driving me crazy. I just want to get home to my family before Christmas. But here's the deal. Kate's got this kind of, rich mother, Eleanor Bishop, and her father died during the Battle of New York. And now she's engaged to this kind of pompous rich cat named Jack Duquesne. Because there you have the swordsman character. Soon after the series starts, Jack's, uncle Armand is killed. Around the same time, there's an auction of items that have been plundered from the remains of the Avengers Tower, which you might remember Thanos blew to hell in Endgame. One item is Ronan's sword, and then they also have Ronan's costume. Jack bids on and gets Ronan's sword. He's kind of a self-styled swordsman, though you never really see him really utilizing that skill. He collects swords, he's into it, fencing. You see him fence a little. You don't really see him use any swordsman-like abilities till the last episode. We'll get to that. He seems like a boorish idiot, kind of a spoiled, rich, I guess, French guy. He's just kind of, effete and goofy, kind of like comedy relief. But you're kind of inclined to think, well, if you know the story of the swordsman, you're inclined to think that even though in this iteration he does not have a history with Hawkeye, that he's going to be some kind of nefarious character. And he's kind of set up that way. And literally, though, he's set up that way. It takes a few episodes to suss out, but they kind of broadcast it by maybe the third. Eleanor Bishop, Kate's mother, is just kind of a bitch. I can't remember this actress, Vera Farmaglia. I can't remember her name. Her last name's like it's like a pasta. So sorry, all my Italian viewers are gonna hate me. I love Italian movies. I love Italian people. I love Italian women, and food. But yeah, I just can't get her name in my head. Very boring, kind of mousy, obnoxious, annoying, whiny character. I don't know if the actress is like that in other shows, but she's got this really bad, frazzled haircut, and she's just like everything that's wrong with rich, fat, liberal people today in New York. And I guess that's the point. Now, Kate lives in kind of this fantasy world of superheroes, so she's not spoiled. I mean, she's spoiled in the sense that, her mother's largesse managed to get her all these shots with archery classes and athletic classes. And so she's really, master gymnast and master archer. She's really incredible. She's also, trained on her own, and she's determined, like, basically to be like the next Hawkeye, more or less, or his sidekick. Maybe she's like going to be Speedy to his Green Arrow. That's a DC Comics Archer reference. But Eleanor's kind of a bitch, and essentially she sets up Jack because he's such kind of a goofy character and kind of a ne'er-do-well. He seems to be a scoundrel. He's got this kind of, pseudo swashbuckling latter-day Errol Flynn thing, which really the swordsman in the comics did originally when he was originally introduced as a villain. So they kind of nailed that, that pomposity. But she sets him up to be this criminal, and that maybe he killed his uncle, and this is kind of this family intrigue with the money. It's kind of reminiscent of Iron Fist, the little soap opera angle. Those elements didn't really do much for me, where you just have Kate trying to hold her own against her mom and Jack, and the business. In the comics, Eleanor's a rich woman, but it's a different kind of company. I can't remember what, but in this show, she's like a security security company. I guess they install security systems or hire security, or both. And yeah, Eleanor like became such an annoying like drain, like psychic vampire every time she was on screen that I was like, and she's always acting, oh, Jack's a great guy, and Kate, you're so mean to him, and it was like so many cliches. I thought this is gonna have to go sideways into a dark place for it to be palatable to me much longer. And yeah, turned out she's just basically a crook, just a craven criminal, and then she's working for the big guy. So the big guy has his hands in several things. One, the thing with Eleanor. The other thing with this group called the Tracksuit Mafia or whatever. It's this strange Russian gang that wears tracksuits, red. I guess if they all were yellow, they'd be too much like Bruce Lee or Kill Bill. Beatrix Kiddo in Kill Bill, and which is a riff on Bruce Lee. Um, but yeah, I don't really get that. It's a little cheesy in a way. It's like they're trying to show the kind of Russian mobsters at the street level, like in the Netflix shows, especially in Daredevil and in The Punisher. But they're kind of a lightweight version. There's really more of a comic relief. They don't have much of an edge. Uh, but it turns out they work for kind of their leader is this guy named Kazi or whatever. I've seen the actor before, but I don't remember his name. And he's kind of this tattooed thug guy, and he's really the lieutenant to the leader. The real leader is Maya Lopez, aka Echo. So here you introduce to Echo, and she, resembles the character in the comic book. I believe the actress is Hispanic and Native American. Also, I think the actress might really be deaf too. I think so. The other thing is, I think the actress is actually uh, missing a limb. One of her legs is artificial. And at first I thought, is it true? Did they CGI it and they're just adding that element to her character? So her character has, all these different isms to her, and it's like she's ableist in several ways, or I don't know. It really looks like she's really got like the metal rod leading to her shoe, that it's really, she's missing a leg, kind of like the actress who plays Barbara Gordon in Titans was really an actress who lost her leg and still, acted and ended up playing a character who was handicapped, Barbara Gordon or Oracle. I do need to do a little research, so I'm not sure if the character who plays Maya is indeed handicapped in that way also. I need to do some reading, but that's the character as we're presented. But the thing about her leg is kind of an aside. They don't really explain it. They don't talk about it. They don't really mention it. You just see it. I mean, you hear more about it in writing from the fan bro sites than you do anywhere in the show itself, which is kind of cool. Now, the deafness thing is essential because, see, this is the thing. When Kate is trying to snoop around and be a amateur do-gooder during this auction and expose Jack Duquesne, and he's bidding on the Ronin sword, she dons the Ronin costume and ends up fighting off some people, and she's pretty damn good fighter out in the field, it turns out. But that brings some confusion up because Maya or Echo has a vendetta against the Ronin. The Ronin killed her father, William Lopez, and they have a flashback on him. And she had kind of a guy who was like an uncle to her who, helped take care of her after the father died. And now she's running this tracksuit mafia thing for him, the big guy. Now in the comics, that's similar to what happened. Her father was a criminal; he was killed, and she was kind of semi-raised by the Kingpin. Um, and Kingpin said Daredevil killed her father, but obviously we're dealing with a much more finite amount of time here. Even in the comics, it was a stretch. Not because Daredevil had been operating over 20 years in the comics, but because Marvel has that stupid sliding time scale where, you know, every comic book, the now is always 7 to 10 years after Fantastic Four #1, which came out 60 fucking years ago. So, uh, I never liked the sliding time scale. I thought it was a cowardly way to sidestep dealing with characters growing up and aging and maturing. I think if you're going to have a character like Wolverine who's immortal, cool, then that takes care of that. Or if you're going to explain why these characters are long lived, like Submariner or something, or Captain America frozen in ice, Nick Fury with the Infinity Formula, but otherwise, just it's just stupid. But anyway, thankfully the MCU is not perpetrating that embarrassment upon us. Everything's moving, and the characters are aging, and the actors are aging. And they're actually in the future of us right now. I think we're in 2021. I think the present day in the MCU, the most recent, the shows, and I presume the Spider-Man movie, Internals movie is 2021. Shang-Chi, also 2024. I'm sorry. I think the third or fourth episode, we bring in Yelena Belova, Natasha's adopted sister, foster sister, who was also part of the Black Widow Red Room program. Another deadly assassin, and her story's told in the Black Widow film. One of the post-credit scenes in that film show Valentina Allegro de Fontaine, who's kind of the flip side of Nick Fury, recruiting people for various purposes. Kind of like the anti-Avengers initiative. I don't know how you want to put it. We haven't really seen yet beyond U.S. Agent and Yelena, and she puts Yelena onto the trail of Clint Barton and claims that he was the one who killed Natasha. And of course, we know from watching Endgame that Natasha sacrificed her life on that planet, whatever it's called, to get that orange rock, as Clint calls it, one of the Infinity Stones, the Soul Stone, if I'm correct. She sacrificed her life. She even forced Clint not to sacrifice his life. So that was the end of Natasha in the MCU, the end of Scarlett Johansson in the MCU. And so the Black Widow film is like a posthumous film, which takes place mostly in 2016, right after Civil War, partially in 2018, right before Infinity War, and then the end takes place in 2024. And Yelena's pretty much swearing over the grave and, talking to Valentina that she's going to avenge Natasha and kill Clint Barton. So she pops up. First, you kind of see what she was up to after the events of the Black Widow movie and right into the events of the blip at the end of Infinity War. So in between her two appearances in Black Widow, the book ends in 2016 and 2024. You see where she's at in 2018, and she fades away, comes back, and for her it's been an instant, but it's been 5 years. She's freaking out. She's like, "Where's Natasha?" And of course, off screen, you realize that she finds out the horrible truth, and hence the scene at the end of Black Widow film. So I hope you've got this timeline all written down and organized. If not, I have a good friend, Sean Lee Levin, who could probably unfurl a timeline for you and get it completely straight. You probably kick ass on that. Sean, ladies and gentlemen, Sean Lee Levin. So, also want to say thank you, Tim Tolbert. Tim Tolbert, ladies and gentlemen, permanent channel patron who's large yes with the Disney Channel, allowed me to watch Hawkeye in its entirety. So, yeah. So Yelena Belova, we encounter her, and she's kind of this masked, black-clad figure on the rooftops, and she manages to take on Hawkeye and Kate Bishop and Echo, who's going after them. Because, Echo thinks that Kate's Ronin, or at the very least they know who Ronin is, and she's going to get her fucking revenge. And Yelena takes on all three of them and pretty much beats all three of them and splits. And then she crashes Kate's apartment in the next episode. And this episode, I read online, a lot of people love it. They think it's cute and funny. And it kind of is. It's kind of goofy. A girl's night, is what Yelena says. Basically, she breaks into Kate's house and makes macaroni and cheese and eats it. gives Kate a little, and then it's like, "Are you done? I want the rest." And she smothers it in sriracha sauce. And I've seen these tweets where people are like, "Yes, I love sriracha on my macaroni and cheese." And it's weird because actually I do too. I eat sriracha on my macaroni and cheese. So watching Florence Pugh, the A24 poster girl, the kind of the modern it of indie cinema crossing over, kind of like the Parker Posey of the 2020s. This delicate, feminine, tiny girl with these beautiful features, cute and very short, and this just amazing acting presence with this just incredible heavy Russian accent. Unlike Natasha, who apparently shed her accent from her time in America and other countries, uh, whereas the other characters in the Black Widow movie still have them. But Yelena spent most of her time in Russia, so she still has a heavy accent. And Florence is a perfect actress to have the accent. It's a little exaggerated, it's a little cartoonish, but it's humorous. Her delivery is humorous. She steals the show just like she stole the movie Black Widow effortlessly. And the stuff she says with Kate, it's like this back and forth, and it's really silly humor, not very funny, really. And Haley Stanfield doesn't always nail the lines in a humorous way. I mean, her character's supposed to be nervous because this, assassin's chilling out in her kitchen eating macaroni and cheese with sriracha. But a lot of people fetishize that scene, and I personally think comedically it's kind of lame. But it's the obligatory Marvel humor pushing the story along, and they're starting to get a little long in the tooth with this, and that's one of the flaws of this show is there's certain set scenes and set pieces where they push it a little too far, and it's really kind of at odds with some of the darker themes in the show, like Ronan's killings and Echo's background and the appearance of the Kingpin, and even Yelena Belova, the deadly assassin. We're talking about heavy themes, and they're kind of watered down at maybe the wrong time. I think in Falcon and Winter Soldier there was a pretty good balance of that. Certainly in Loki, they fearlessly went into all kinds of different moods and levels, especially with WandaVision too. But this show, Hawkeye's not as masterfully written and directed. It's not as skillfully. It doesn't shift moods as skillfully. But the actors, Haley Stanfield seems a little uncertain, but I think that a lot of that's her character is uncertain. Renner plays it straight all the way through, and bless his heart, he pulls it off. He's the glue. He's Hawkeye, man. Come on. And but Florence Pugh really steals this scene she's in. She's just so funny and so intense, and she's this glowing presence of just weird. Her character is she's this diminutive, petite, pretty woman, but she convinces you. I mean, unlike the perpetually victimized character she plays in Midsummer, uh, she's like one of these characters who lulls you into this security, lulls the other characters, the audience, whatever, with these kind of witticisms and this funny broken English heavy accent. It's like Moose and Squirrel, she's almost like Natasha of Rocky and Bullwinkle. And then she's just, at a heartbeat, you're reminded that she just is a badass and can kill everybody in the fucking room and will gladly do it. It's no big deal. So, and her thing to Kate is, "I'm here to kill Clint Barton." And they argue over Clint, and she's insisting that Clint's a bad person. By this time, Kate knows he's been the Ronin, and that point's kind of thrown around. But you know, Kate doesn't really know what happened on that planet with Clint and Natasha, and neither does Yelena. And like Clint tells Yelena in the last episode, "If I told you exactly what happened when she died, you wouldn't believe me anyway." And it's true, because at their level, Yelena and Kate have mainly dealt with down to earth violence and crime. They haven't dealt with these cosmic matters. They haven't hung out on this planet with the Red Skull and beckoning them to the Soul Stone, etc. To say, undo the effects of the blip. So, yeah, Natasha saved the world. A lot of people in the series say, "Hey, Hawkeye, you saved the world," and he feels weird. It's an uneasy burden on his shoulders because he tried to give his life to save the universe, but Natasha beat him to it, and that's always on him, And so the Elena thing brings even more pain to the guy. Meanwhile, he's juggling and trying to look out for Kate and wanting to get back to his family, wanting to just take the Ronin suit and just burn it and forget he was ever the Ronin. He calls it Ronin. A lot of characters call it Ronin. I've always been told it was pronounced Ronin. So Marvel's got their own pronunciation. It's all good. I mean, when I was a little kid, I said Ronin, but then I was perpetually corrected when the Frank Miller's show came out, and then I started watching samurai movies. So all these elements kind of come together by the end. Basically, the climactic thing really is the end of episode 5, where you realize that Yelena tells Kate, this is who hired me to kill Clint, and it's her mother. And her mother had met with a dude who we'd seen a little glance of in the Echo intro episode, and I knew it was him. And they kept it really hush hush that D'Onofrio was coming back. I'm not sure why. I mean, they kept it really tight. Same with Charlie Cox in Spider-Man movie. It's like, I don't know if Kevin Feige didn't have the confidence that people wanted those characters in the quote unquote MCU proper, or maybe he just thought, oh, this is going to be such an incredible reveal. It's going to blow their minds. I hope that's what he was thinking. Because there's kind of an uneasy relationship in Kevin Feige's mind in certain interviews, and certainly in the minds of many fans and pundits, about what's in and is not in the MCU. So I talked about this a bit in my Hellstrom videos, and I'm going to talk about it before this video is over, briefly as I can, because it's an important point I want to make one last time after watching all this. So anyway, yeah, so, Clint's like, that's Kingpin, and that's who Eleanor's meeting with. So, D'Onofrio gets a full reveal in this episode, and, we see him talking with Maya, and by this time we realize that, we find out that the Ronin killed William Lopez because of an informant tipped him off, and, we realize that Kazi, her right-hand man / sort of boyfriend, is the one who did it, and at the behest of the Kingpin. So that's kind of like what happened in the Daredevil comics, except instead of Daredevil is Ronin, who was set up to do the deed. And technically, Ronin did actually kill the guy, but that's a whole other thing. So, yeah, so we see D'Onofrio. He's got the white coat, and he's got a white trench coat, a crazy white hat. And he's got the cane, the famous Kingpin cane with the, I'm not sure what head of what animals on it, a gold thing. But I don't think he ever carried that in the Netflix show. But he always has in the comic book. So that was nice. We've got an MCU Kingpin. So is it the same character or not? Okay, we'll get to that in that other discussion. But essentially everything comes to a climax, and Hawkeye and Kay make a ton of trick arrows, and they crash this Christmas party, and they flush out Eleanor, who Kingpin tries to kill with good reason, and I was pleased to see that. Unfortunately, Kate saves her, and really the only time Kingpin really goes all out is against Kate. They have an extended fight, and the thing about D'Onofrio is, when he enters a scene, or in this case, enters the series for the first time, his Kingpin is he speaks in this very mannered kind of tone, and it's almost a little ponderous and melodramatic, but then it grows on you quickly, like a fungus. And I'm just kidding. And when the time comes for his character to turn, and get serious, like shit is getting serious, I am going to fucking kill you. That seething thing underneath that guttural, grandiose tone, it gets really scary. I mean, I think he's really has portrayed the most genuine menace of any Marvel villain, any MCU villain. I would thought that before he was officially in, but definitely I think it's true now. The only people that come close, I think, are Ray Winstone's really sleazy guy in Black Widow movie, and Thanos, at times. But really, D'Onofrio has the beat. I mean, you're a little scared when he starts to turn that rage thing on. Like this guy, he's capable of anything. He doesn't really have superhuman strength per se, but he kind of does. I mean, he kind of can do whatever he sets his mind to because he just can channel that intense rage and that presence. So he pretty much beats the living shit out of Kate. It doesn't get violent like Netflix bloody level, but yeah, she doesn't really. I mean, she survived. Clint says toward the end, hey, not many people can say they went against the Kingpin and lived. That's an accomplishment. That's true, but she didn't really hurt him. I mean, her mom hit him with a car, and he gets back up, and she throws some arrows at him that explode, and he still keeps going. And Maya has taken out Kazi, knowing that he killed her father or was responsible for her father's death, and she tracks down Wilson Fisk, Kingpin, and finally turns a gun on him, and he's still trying to talk his way out of it, and the camera goes up into the sky, and then you hear the gunshot. I guess the implication is she blew his head off, he's dead. So I wonder, they brought him back for all that, and now he's dead. Or is he dead? They're talking about an Echo TV series, which I think is a little premature. I don't really think Echo has enough mythology behind her on her own, independent of the Daredevil mythology and the Hawkeye mythology, to have her own series, but, it seems like what they want to do because of the fact she is adds to the representation factor with the minority and the handicap thing. I don't know. I like the actress. She's very attractive. She's intense. It's a little different than kind of what I pictured Echo as being, but I think she's fine. I think really she's going to need some good writing and directing to kind of shepherd her character. But even Marvel has had trouble with the character of Echo having a direction. I think there's a lot of ideas you could use, but personally, like I said, have her meet Daredevil. But then there are fanboys who are like, well, if Daredevil and Kingpin appear on the Echo show, it's going to be their show. It's going to be Netflix all over again, and Echo's going to be foreshadowed. I really read an article like this. This poor handicapped woman is going to be foreshadowed by these two white guys, from this other show, and fandom. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know how that's going to go. But yeah, I mean, Eleanor's arrested, so fuck her. And Hawkeye gets back home. He has a dog they picked up, a one-eyed dog, and they end up naming it Lucky. He's a pizza dog. I don't know if they got him at the pizza shop, I think. I don't know if it's going to end up being Kate's dog or Clint's dog, but Clint takes Kate and the dog home, two strays, as he puts it, and they have Christmas. And he has stolen from this Avengers auction thing a Rolex watch, and his wife asked him about it in an earlier episode, and Kate found it, gave it to Clint. So he surprises his wife Laura with it, and when she turns it around, he says something about next time take better care of your things. It's got the shield symbol and it's got 19 at the bottom. Now the way I interpret that is Agent 19, like Sharon Carter was Agent 13, which means that Clint probably met Laura when he worked for S.H.I.E.L.D., that she was a S.H.I.E.L.D. Agent 19, and that therefore their meeting was similar to his meeting with his comic book wife, Bobby Morse, who may or may not have been Agent 19 too. I'm not sure how closely they conflated it. Yes, I should know Bobby Morse is Agent 19. I've been reading these things for 40 years. Sorry. But I'll check up on it for you. So that's kind of it. And, they end up talking about a name for Kate, and he's like, I thought of one, and they cut to the logo Hawkeye. So, she's going to be the next Hawkeye, obviously. So this series, I talked a lot about the comic roots of Hawkeye. This series is largely drawn in a lot of ways from a recent, like in the last 10 years or so, miniseries called Hawkeye by Matt Fraction, starring Clint Barton and Kate Bishop and Lucky the dog. And I'm not sure how many of the other super detailed things are from the comic. I mean, probably some of the Eleanor Bishop stuff. Oh, and by the way, Jack Duquesne does wield a sword and help fight the tracksuit mafia toward the end too. And, he's pretty good at it. So I don't know. Maybe Valentina will recruit him also as one of her kind of people, and maybe he'll be comedy relief. Maybe he'll join the Avengers as a swordsman and maybe die and be a pathetic character. I don't know. He seems like comedy relief, but it was fun though when he finally started, using the sword. And it turns out his character was just a silly, aspiring swordsman. He wasn't really a Lothario crook trying to seduce Eleanor's money away. Actually, she was setting him up at the behest of the kingpin. So, good, bad, ugly, whatever. The verdict, I'm glad Kingpin's back. I hope he's not already dead. It was good to see him. What takes place in the MCU and what doesn't? So, the rule of thumb up to a point was that all the shit movies, the ABC shows, the Hulu shows, am I forgetting anything? And the Netflix shows were all part of the same continuity. Okay. Then, at some point, it was decided that they couldn't really keep the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. continuity tethered close enough to the Captain America and Avengers Nick Fury continuity. So, at some point, they declared that seasons, I think 3 on up to 6, I guess the last season, of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are no longer canonical. They didn't take place in the MCU. I guess they took place in another universe of the multiverse. Okay, now that series had a spinoff, The Inhumans. So that means the Inhumans that we saw, that we thought were the Inhumans of the MCU, don't exist in the MCU. So they can be rebooted again. And the show, The Inhumans, was really bad. The odd thing is, it was a pretty straight adaptation plot-wise. Plot-wise, it was, yeah. It's just the acting was very uneven, the designs were uneven, the effects were kind of weak. It could have been so much more. It was fun to watch for an episode or two and then go, spend the whole budget on Lockjaw. Which, if you're going to do that if you're going to focus on one particular iconic character that you have to create, manifest, then Lockjaw would be the one in the Inhuman. I mean, Triton has like a tiny cameo before he's killed because they're probably like, we can't afford to do the Triton makeup every week. Yeah, it was kind of lame. So anyway, that one's gone. What else? All the Netflix series are supposed to be in the MCU. The actors signed contracts that they could appear in the movies. They never did. There were references to events of the movies. Not only in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons 1 and 2, which I guess are canonical, but also in Netflix shows. Mainly to the Battle of New York. They made references to Captain America, the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man. There were other like companies and businesses like Hammer, who made the weapons, Justin Hammer's company. I think Roxxon Oil, a bunch of little ones. Then they also in the Netflix shows made some references to some background things that tied in with Hulu's Cloak and Dagger show. So Hulu also had the Runaway. So now it seems Figa and company have decided that Runaways and Cloak and Dagger are not MCU canonical either. Okay, so that leaves the movies, the Disney Plus shows, first 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the whole Agent Carter series. Now that of the ABC shows does stand as canon because they reference it all throughout, like Endgame and the Flash time travel stuff. So what about the Netflix shows, and what about Hellstrom, the other Hulu show? Well, I did a whole show on Hellstrom, and even up to the time Hellstrom came out and Marvel kind of took their name off of it as a brand, Figa said, yes, it takes place in the MCU, but there's not going to be any direct crossovers, but it is in the same world. And again, they reference things like Roxxon Oil and kind of landmarks in the background that indicate it takes place on the same Earth. Well, maybe it takes place on an alternate Earth in the multiverse now. So I put a question mark on Hellstrom. Though that character would be certainly welcome in a movie alongside the likes of Morbius, Blade, and Doctor Strange. That would be incredible if they could do a horror one. They wouldn't make it rated R, but Anyway, Disney, fuck Disney. So what about the 5 Netflix series? No, I mean 6 if you count the one season of Defenders. That's obvious. But those 5, well, obviously now Kingpin is in. So some iteration of the events of Daredevil are in, and the Defenders. Well, no, Kingpin wasn't in the Defenders. Sorry. Um, Kingpin only appeared in the Daredevil show. Punisher appeared in Daredevil alongside Kingpin. So some iteration of the events of the Daredevil series. And due to the 5-year blip and everything, if you posit, as they originally did, that Netflix shows all take place before Thanos' snap, then yes, Kingpin could have gone out of prison, where he went at the end of Daredevil series, and reemerged as the shadowy, main big guy of New York by the time 2024 has rolled around in the MCU. Charlie Cox appears in Spider-Man No Way Home as Matt Murdock / Daredevil. I have not seen it. I have not seen the footage. I've seen a lot of people posting fake footage. Talked to people who've seen it, but no one's given me the straight dope. So when I see it, I'll believe it. Not so much that I'll believe it, I just will know what context. In other words, does he appear as a character on the Prime MCU Earth alongside like the Tom Holland Peter Parker, or does he appear as part of the alternate Earths with like the other Spider-Mans in the multiverse? And now things are going to get even more complicated with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is a sequel to both WandaVision and Loki. Disney Plus series. Does that cover it? So I don't know what's up with Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Punisher, or Iron Fist. Some elements of Iron Fist were used in Shang-Chi, but no direct references. They actually handled those elements better in that movie than in the Iron Fist series. But that was in my Shang-Chi review. You can look for that too. I don't know what else to say, man. So here we are. We're at kind of a turning point where we're going to kind of be bringing all the continuities together, the characters, and the ones that don't all fit into what the films call the 616 universe, even though technically the comic Prime universe is 616 and the movie universe has a different number designation. We get the other number designations in No Way Home, and also a little bit in Far From Home with the Mysterio thing. So that's all coming together. So I guess the Doctor Strange is the next frontier to find out what this is all the fuck about. As far as on the Disney Plus slate, there are going to be no more Marvel Studios shows. There's not going to be any more Hulu or ABC or anything else, anywhere else, or Netflix. That's done. So that's why we're trying to sort out, or I'm trying to sort out what's what as far as what's canonical going forward. And like I said, with the multiverse, it kind of renders some of that moot. It's all true in the multiverse. Anyway, I'm just waiting for Kang to sort it all out. So the next show, I think, on Netflix, maybe Moon Knight. On Disney Plus, maybe Moon Knight. Trailer looks pretty good. And then She-Hulk, I guess. So we'll see. So yeah, I have yet to see the Eternals film. When I do, I'll do my chapter 2 of what we need to talk about the Eternals. And I have yet to see the Spider-Man film, which just opened, the other day. I'm going to see it either this weekend coming or the following weekend. And I will definitely do a official review episode. So anyway, this is the longest show I've done for a while, and I'm going to record some more episodes later on and post at other days. But thanks a lot for listening, and I'll be back with you later, probably a bit more intoxicated and rambling about all kinds of other things. So thanks for listening. Hope you guys liked Hawkeye. For me, it was a mixed bag. It was fun. It had some great moments, some great ideas. I think it's the least distinctive of the Disney Plus series, the 4 so far. I'd say it's a notch below Falcon. Though there are some things in it I liked better than Falcon, like, for instance, Kingpin. Maybe neck on neck. So who knows what the next one will be, and who knows what the future holds. But I do believe that the Girls' Night with Black Widow, the new Black Widow and the new Hawkeye, One is the foreboding of these two women are going to be in the Avengers. There'll be the new Hawkeye and the new Black Widow in the Avengers, and they're going to have this ongoing repartee between Kate's kind of clueless naivety and Yelena's brazen, deadpan Russian accent. Um, yeah, Florence Pugh, poster girl of A24. A24 has two new movies getting ready to come out. I'll talk about them in another video. I saw the trailers. So anyway, Florence Pugh's not in them though. Anyway, rock on. Talk to you soon.